Welcome to the Noble Quran session number 5 with Dr. Dalton Garris.
So this is lesson number 5. We're a bit behind because we had to take, I think because I talked too much, actually. But we're going to hit some of the things in 4 that we didn't quite get, and then we can jump to Surah 3, Al-Imran. And as you can see, or as you will discover as we do this, the Quran is repetitive. That is, it repeats itself many times because it's not that His Holiness Muhammad was speaking to an illiterate community, far from it, but he was speaking to one that was forgetful. And this was, remember, this was over a 23-year period. So it's not as if they had just heard it last week. What would happen is that there would be a revelation. He would call his chroniclers, and they would take it down, and then they would begin to put it together and disperse it and spread it. So then it would happen again. And so this happened over a period of 23 years. So I just wanted to drop back. Let me begin sharing here so we can get to host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Neda. Oh, she's gone. Yes, well, all right. Well, if you have your Qurans, we'll open it in a minute, but if you had your Qurans, let's go through some of the ones that we didn't hit that are listed in the lessons. Do you all have the lessons in front of you, or if no, you don't have them? Then you haven't taken them down from the borrowed website. If you don't have them and you don't want to try to use that Google borrowed website, email me after class. Email me directly, and I will send it. I will send it and also other things to you as well. Okay, good, very good. All right, so we're going to look at just a couple of things here. Let me just pull this down. Then I'm going to open it up for you. I mean when Netta comes back. Okay, so then if you will jump ahead to in Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, to 144. Can you do that? To verse 144. 144. That seems to be way back from where we might be, but there's some interesting things in here I'd like to hit. Yeah, we left off last time at about 114. So let's jump ahead to 144. And let's see what we can pull down from that. Now, this was written, this was revealed to His Holiness Muhammad at a time when, as Baha'u'llah explains in the Kitab Yagan, at a time when the Jews and the Christians were making disparaging remarks about him regarding his turning to Jerusalem as the point of adoration in prayer. Now, I don't think as Christians we had a point of adoration, but Islam does, and Baha'i does. So let's have a look. What this point of adoration is: the direction in which you turn when you're saying your prayer. So they were mocking him and laughing at him, saying, "Oh, I don't know what they were saying, but you can possibly make up some things that would work in that context. Verily, we have seen the turning of your face towards the heaven. Surely we shall turn you to a qibla, a direction of prayer that shall please you. So turn your face in the direction of Al-Masjid Al-Haram, which was Mecca. Al-Masjid Al-Haram, which was the place that, as we read earlier, Abraham and his son Ishmael built. which has the black stone in it and other things. So he immediately turned his face in the middle of his prayer. He immediately turned his face from Jerusalem to Mecca. Now, I don't know exactly where he was, but he was near Mecca, so he would have just faced the city. As soon as this happened, many persons ran away. And the reason they ran away was because, as much as they may have loved Muhammad, they thought of him as sort of a reformer of previous religions, not somebody who could actually make new laws. So he is an independent manifestation of God, and this proved it. This did please His Holiness Muhammad, but later on, God revealed that that's not why he did it. He said, we did this not to please you, but to see who follows the God and his teachings and who turns on his heels and runs. And so it was a test for the community to see that. Now, the Baha'i community had experienced the same thing in the Conference of Badasht, but I won't go into that right now. Many of you are familiar with it. So then, let's see where we go after this. I'd like to hit 153. Again, patience is exhorted. 53, O you who believe, seek help in patience and in prayer. Then we have 163. This is where it gets interesting from a numerical standpoint. 163. And your God, your Ilah, is one Ilah. What's the word for one in Arabic? Wahid. Wahid. And what is that comprised of in letters? Waw, had, and dar. And what do they sum to? Guess what they sum to? Yes, 19. Absolutely. They sum to 19. And he says that these, and indeed, this is an evidence or a sign for the people of truth, so that they will, for the people of understanding and a comfort to them. This will be repeated in sort of 73, I think it is. We'll hit that later on, of course. Okay, then we jump to 174. This is a clear reference to the clergy, not just the clergy in Muhammad's time, but the clergy in any time. Remember now, what is the goal of religion? The goal of a true religion is to inform the people and instruct the people. And what is the goal of a religious ideology? It is to get and keep power. It's to keep power over the people. So by their actions, you can clearly see what is a true religion and what is religious ideology in the guise of pure religion. Okay, so we have here those who conceal what God has sent down in the book and purchase a small gain therewith, they eat into their bellies nothing but fire. God will not speak of them on the day of resurrection, nor purify them, and theirs will be a painful torment. So they compile false statements, and we see this again and again. For instance, some of you who have read the different tablets of the Quran, but you can also just read in the Gospels as well. Basically, the manifestations of God are complaining that the people, we see you citing from your book the verses of God, whereby and with which to condemn the new manifestation of God and to dispute idly with him. So that's what's being referenced here. He also says under it, 177, it is not piety for you to turn your faces to the east or to the west, but he is pious. But he is pious who believes in God and in the last day. The last day. The last day. That's a very significant reference, and one that we have a difficulty with sometimes, the last day, because according to many in religions of the past, the last day means there will be no day following it. But that's not necessarily true. If we go back to Genesis, we read that the earth was made in 6 days, correct? And then what did God do? He rested from his work. After that, what? Did he quit? No, he started a new week. How many days it has, we don't know. But it was 6 days, and that's why we make a week out of 7 days. We follow 6 days, and on the 7th, we rest from our work. And other places in the world, I suppose, follow a different week, so to speak, work week or something. Maybe they have 4 days or 9 days. I don't know. Different lengths of months too. Someone might be able to tell us for next time, how many days in the week the Aztec calendar had, which makes no reference to the Abrahamic dispensations. Okay. Then we have, I'd like to jump to 188. We go to there, we see with 188, and eat up not one another's property unjustly, nor give bribery to the rulers, that you may knowingly eat up a part of the property of others sinfully. When you give bribes, you're giving your money to the rulers so that the rulers can get something they want instead of what the people want. And so this is obviously what we call corruption. And when a ruler asks for a bribe, he wants money to do something that you want him to do, let's say, that the people don't necessarily want him to do. And that's why he's asking for money. Wow, this is very hard. I can remember speaking to a Baha'i in Iran who spoke with me about taking bribes from Baha'is to allow Baha'is to continue to maintain their university positions. Otherwise, they would be dismissed if they didn't pay a bribe. Well, for a while, this was paid. Then, after it was condemned by the government, the next day, one of the instructors went in, and the man said, "Did you hear the new announcement about paying bribes?" "Yes, we did." "Well, now, because it's so dangerous, I have to get twice the bribe from you that I got before, because I'm taking a real chance now." So sort that one out in your head. (190) Abdu'l-Baha explains that His Holiness Muhammad never fought an offensive war. He only fought defensive wars, no matter what you've seen on TV or anything else. What happened after the time of Muhammad is something else, because what the Muslims did and what Muhammad did are as distinct as what Christians did and what Christ did. So he says here, "Fight in the way of God those who fight you, but transgress not the limits. Truly, God likes not the transgressors." Okay. All right, now there's a little thing in brackets here that says, this verse is the first one that was revealed in connection with jihad, but it was supplemented by another verse that later on is supposed to have subsumed it and made it null and void. Well, it didn't make it null and void. That's something that the people wanted done later so that they could follow in their own ways. There is a verse from the four Gospels. I'm not sure whether it's John or Luke. I'll try to find it for you. But where Christ Jesus says, full well, they break the laws of God, that they may continue in their own traditions. And I'll try to find that for next time. I remember all the stuff, but I never remember where I heard it, which is terrible. I shouldn't quote it if I can't say it, but I do anyway. Okay. All right. Next, I wanted to jump to 192, 193 continues this theme. But if they cease, 192 says, then God is forgiving and most merciful, and fight them until there is no more disbelief or worshiping of others in them, no fitna in them. But if they cease, let there be no transgression except against those who break the rules, the zalimin, those who break the rules and say, yeah, we will do this, and then later on they break it. We have seen evidences of this sort of behavior many times in many places, most often publicly among politicians and among world leaders who promise to do one thing and then they do something else. So it's a kind of hypocrisy in a way. But basically what he's saying is, and he explains it later on, if they don't want to fight you anymore, stop fighting. Draw up a truce and explain the rules and regulations, et cetera, what they can do and what you can do, et cetera, and leave them in peace. And don't bother them unless they bother you. $195. This has to do with giving in the way of God. We call it huququllah, the right of God, and the Muslims call it, let's see, I'll think of it in a minute. Suddenly, zakat, zakat, the poor do. And it says, and perform properly the Hajj and Umrah. No, I'm sorry, I was 196. And spend in the cause of God, and do not throw yourselves into destruction, and do good. And do good. Truly, God loves that person who does well. What does he mean, throw himself into destruction? What if I give away all my wealth to the church, or to the synagogue, or the house of worship, and then I have nothing to live on? What will I become to others? A burden, yes. I will be a burden on myself and on others, because now I don't have the means to take care of myself. So he says, don't do this. Don't do this way. Obviously, if you're facing death, you're not going to need material things anymore, and so you can give them as you please. But while you're still living in life, follow a middle road. And in another verse, and we will come upon it, so I don't have to remember the reference right now, he says, and have not your hand tied around your neck. In other words, that you can't give anything, nor fully outstretched that you become blameworthy, but follow a path in between the two extremes. I see I've referenced here 1729, and let me see if that is the reference that I just referenced. 1729. Here it is, chapter 17, verse 29. And let not your hand be tied to your neck, nor stretch it forth to its utmost reach, so that you become blameworthy and in severe poverty. And that's a reference to 2:195, which we just read. Well, at least they support one another. Okay. Then let's move ahead. $217, very, very important and very significant. No matter what priests, ministers, zibis, rabbis, mujtahids, no matter what they say, this is what God says. He says, 217, he says, they ask you concerning fighting in the sacred months. Okay, he says, the fighting therein is a great transgression, but a greater transgression with God is to prevent mankind from following the way of God, to disbelieve in him, to prevent access to al-Masjid al-Haram, to prevent access to it. Well, gee, that's news to the persons who run al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, because you can't even go to Friday prayers inside a mosque unless you confess to being a Muslim. Are you Muslim, they say. Now, if you're a Baha'i and you want to go in, but you can't say I'm a Muslim, you can quote and say something or other. I believe His Holiness Muhammad is the prophet of God and the seal of the prophet. So maybe they'll buy it and they'll let you in. But you're toying with the truth. It's toying with the truth. It's being a little bit devious. No, you can't go there, much less to Mecca. You're not allowed in Mecca unless you're a Muslim. And so it says here, prevent mankind from following in the way. All this is worse than killing.
And because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to go in there, right? Because I'm a woman?
No, I'm unsure. I think women and men do
separate.
the Hajj on different days and
Okay.
at different times or days and in different groups.
I see. Okay.
And they follow something a little bit different, but certainly many of the prostrations and ritual actions that are in the Hajj have to be done by women, because they were initially done by Hagar.
That's right. Yeah,
So
right.
where would they be if they said,
Okay.
no, women can't do this?
Okay.
That would be very clumsy indeed.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. 218, look at it. Verily, those who have believed and those who have emigrated for the sake of religion, that is, pioneers, and have striven hard in the way of God, and all these hope for God's mercy, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful. It didn't say what religion you were. For instance, when was the gospel considered, according to Hand of the Cause William Sears in his wonderful book, his magisterial book, Thief in the Night, when was the gospel considered to have been taught across all the world? That was one of the three things. Remember, whenever you see the abomination of desolation is told by Daniel the prophet, whenever this gospel is preached throughout the world, it was in 1844 when Christian communities had pushed their way deeply into Central Africa, deep into Central Africa, which is now the Central African Republic and became the Belgian Congo later. I believe that's the geography that they're talking about. And that was done by Christians. It was done by Christians. And who taught people about Moses? The Jews. Actually, the Jews remained right around Jerusalem or in certain areas, and then wherever their regional tasks of trade and industry took them. No, it was the Christians, because the Christians took the whole Bible, Old and New Testament. And in order to understand the New Testament, you had to read the Old and accept it. So it was the Christians who actually spread, and that's why we have the Ten Commandments all over the Judeo-Christian world, and in the Muslim world as well, for that matter. Okay. 220 deals with orphans, of which you can expect a lot when people are warring all the time. And they were warring, tribe against tribe, etc. And they were also warring when they went out to fight a defensive war for the sake of God's cause. If they discovered in the tribe that they had defeated orphans, they were to take them home and raise them in the Muslim way. And then if the orphans came with wealth, they were to look after that wealth, not dip into it and spend it themselves, but only use it to either make it better or keep it the same value. And then when the orphans come of age, then you are to remit back to them their wealth and allow them to go their own way. So it says here, let's see. This is 220, is it? 220 deals with orphans, yes. They ask you concerning orphans, say the best thing is to work honestly in their property. If you mix your affairs with theirs, then they are your brothers. And God knows him who means mischief from him who means good. And if God had wished, he could have put you into difficulties. Truly, God is almighty, all wise. And if God wished, he could put you into difficulties. Reminds me of a hadith that's listed in the book here. We'll come upon it, and I'll point it out again, where the story goes that a man had sheep, and he was asked by a wise man, look, if you have sheep, and there is the king's property, and if even one of your sheep or one of your lambs goes over onto the king's property and begins to graze on the king's field, he will take away all your sheep. What will you do? Well, the common sense answer is to keep those sheep as far away from that line as possible, so that your property and the king's property isn't confused. Because again, it's like a type 1, type 2 error. What is the likelihood? What is what's the cost if you keep the sheep away and you didn't have to keep the sheep away? That's very little, a bit of grass. But what is the cost if you didn't keep the sheep away and you were supposed to keep the sheep away? Oh, it's very high, because even if one sheep goes over, you lose all your sheep and maybe your head too, and maybe your family also. So this is a reminder that when you're thinking of it, as someone told me one time, when you're doing something for God, do it one better. If you're not sure if the sun is set or not, wait a little while, wait another 15 minutes or whatever it happens to be. I wanted to also say, they ask you concerning alcoholic drink and gambling. This is 219, just before it. Say, in them is a great sin and some benefits for men, but the sin of them is greater than the benefits. And they ask you what they ought to spend, that is, spend in the way of God. Say, that which is spare beyond your needs. That is what you do. And when we look at our hukuk Allah, for instance, for the Baha'is and for others who who are tithed, etc., it is what is beyond your needs. That is what is taxed, and it is on that that you add up your tax. One of the things I've heard people doing is if they do something that's purely entertainment, because this country is all about entertainment, as you know. If you do something that's purely entertaining, take out 19% and lay it aside, because you'll owe it later on. That wasn't necessary. So I would like to do that. I do it I do it many times when I think of it. Often I forget. Okay. All right then. Moving on. All right, let's see. 225. God will not call you to account for that which is unintentional in your oaths. This includes what you may do in your dreams. For instance, if you have a dream and you're doing terrible things and evil things in your dream, you didn't do anything evil. While I was in Abu Dhabi, you like this, and teaching at the men's college, we had 2 campuses, men's college and women's college. And the men said, well, you know, we know what to do when we have a bad dream. I say, well, what's that? Well, we're supposed to lean over the left side of our bed and spit 3 times like this, and then go back to sleep. And that will protect us from the results of the bad dream. I said, have you Okay, this is an engineering school. Have you guys actually tried that as an experiment? You know, try doing it and not doing it and seeing what happens? What was the result? And oh, by the way, why is it that you spit off the left side of your bed? Gee, I don't know why. Because your wife's on the right side of your bed. Yeah. So you have to really investigate things. And what is it? What we get up to now are persons who follow a religion who have never really looked at their book carefully, and we haven't been able to because we haven't known how. But Baha'u'llah tells us how. He tells us, he says, look at it. Ask yourself, what profit would it be were this to literally happen? And as opposed to the allegorical meaning of it, what profit would it be to mankind for that to happen? Now, getting on, I'm just going to mention a few things here, 247 through 249. This discusses Saul, who was the first king of Israel. Why did they have a king? Didn't they have direct revelation from God coming down in clouds? Yeah, but they wanted a king. No, we want a king. We want to be like everyone else. Okay. That's Saul, the first king of Israel. And then 253. Let's go to that. I'd like to read that. Got it right over here. Let me get you down there to here, over here. I'm cheating you all. Got this thing up here. Let's get to 253. I'm on page 73. 3, here it is. Here. Okay. And Netta, the reason we're not sharing the screen is because it says, as I try to do it, that the host has not enabled it for participants to do. So I'm not sure if she's here, but anyway, okay. That remains the same. So we are at 256. 253. Let's just go to 253. Those messengers, we preferred some of them to others. To some, God spoke directly. Others he raised to degrees. And to Jesus, son of Mary, we gave clear proofs and evidences and supported him with the angel Gabriel. If God had willed, succeeding generations would not have fought against each other after clear verses of God had come to them, but they differed, some of them believing and others disbelieved. If God had willed, they would not have fought against one another, but God does what he chooses. Verily, he shall do whatever he pleases. And so you can imagine why this might be. As much as we may speak against competition in certain children's sports, et cetera, we are expected to compete with ourselves daily to make our evening better than our morning and our morning better than our evening. And this requires that we set benchmarks for ourselves or milestones and to try to fulfill them as best we can to mark down when we do. Also, we know in nature that it is a not so much a survival of the fittest, although it's a competition for the resources, the scarce resources of life. It's the same way in spiritual terms. If you want to get to the top, you've got to compete first with yourself. You have to overcome the devil inside you. That's really the only thing that has the power to chuck you into hell instead of guiding you to heaven. Your own self. We know that. That's really our only enemy, not the one from the outside. Okay, now, and then again, 254. Let's see, did I have, okay, we're on, deals with orphans, 245. Saul, the first king, 253. Some messengers we allowed. If you want a further discussion of that, and you read the Kitab Yagan, you will find the discussion of this verse on pages 103 to 104, or if you have a newer edition, paragraph 110. And you'll also find it in 176 to 177, or paragraph 191. And that's where Baha'u'llah describes this, and that's, of course, where I found it. So then we have here 256. This is something you should memorize. Why? Well, because otherwise people can use their religion against you. There is no compulsion in religion. Verily, the right path has become distinct from the wrong path. Whoever disbelieves in the wrong things, tagut, which means all sorts of conspiracies, the doubters and the superstitions, etc. Whoever gives this up and believes in God, then he has grasped the most trustworthy handhold. The most trustworthy handhold is such an important term that it is mentioned in the Kitab Yagan during the same discussion on page 205 or paragraph 226, and it's called the Urwatul Walqa, which means the sure handle, the firm handhold that won't break. And that's what it's referred to here, the trustworthy handhold that will never break. And God is all hearer, all knower. So for those who say you have to believe as we believe, there is no compulsion in religion. There is no compulsion in religion. And then he says, verily, the right path has been made distinct from the wrong path. No question about it. And His Holiness Muhammad said it right there, so that after that, there's no excuse for anybody to try to force people to do one thing or another thing. Then we come to 269, which is that he grants hikmah, that is hikmah 2, go down to 2. Hikmah literally means wisdom, but it means here the knowledge and the understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, means the laws, and one's ability to speak and act in the correct and right way, according to them. But it also means, of course, knowledge of God, because knowledge of God is the most transcendent knowledge we can have. He grants it to whom he wills, and he to whom it is granted is indeed granted abundant good, but none remember except men of understanding. None remember, that is, that people don't remember that it is God who gives wisdom. It's God who gives wisdom. And then when we read in one of the Baha'i books, it says, verily, knowledge is a light that God shineth into the heart of whomsoever he willeth. That's in the Kitab Yagan, of course. Then again, over 272, and whatever you spend in good, it will be repaid to you in full, and you shall not be wronged. This promise is given again and again by all the holy books of God. Then there is a whole thing about compound interest, 275, compound interest. Those who eat riba, and that's the term, the Arabic term for compound interest is riba. Now, there's a great debate as to whether it means simple interest or any interest at all. Now, there are a lot of laws, rules, and regulations that over 1,300 years have sprung up about this whole business. Riba, my reading of the Holy Quran and what I've studied in terms of economics in the Baha'i faith and in other religions, what it means to me is compound interest. Now, do you know the difference between compound interest and simple interest? If you have a car loan or a mortgage, you certainly do. Simple interest is that if you, let's say you borrow $100 for 10%, how much do you owe back? $110. But what if you borrow $100 at 10% compounded per month? Now, what do you owe back? Quite a lot of money, because you're going to owe 10% of the 100 of the first month. And then what do you have the second month? You have $221. And it's 10% of that. Oh, gracious Lord. This adds up. This is compound interest. So whatever's left, the whole interest, it goes against it. The whole interest goes against it. So you have to be careful about the difference between simple interest and compound interest. Compound interest does indeed eat up your funds. It also increases you in life. You've all heard stories and you've heard persons discuss compound interest in terms of the growth of money. But there's more to it than that. It's also the growth of knowledge. For instance, when you're learning arithmetic, you seem to be going in a straight line of development through algebra. And then the next thing after algebra is what? Calculus. Now, all of a sudden, you go up like this, because with calculus, you can do all sorts of things of growth theory. How long does it take for a paramecium, one paramecium, subdividing at its own rate to equal the mass of the world? Not that long. And then what about when you look at compound interest with respect to money growth or the growth of any sort of organic living thing or anything like that? You find things grow very fast because it's the interest on the new principles. So if you have something that's 110 and you add 10% to that, now you've got 120. You add 10% on 120, now you have 122. And so it grows much faster. So getting back to our topic, sorry to have rambled on too long about that. That's what happens when you have an economics teacher for doing this. Those who eat riba will not stand in the day of resurrection, except the standing of a person beaten by Satan, leading him to insanity. That is because they say trading is only like riba. That is trading. I get a good price for it. How'd you do on that? Well, I got a good price for it. Got more than I paid for it. He might have paid too much, but he wanted it, and that's what he paid. Trading is only like riba, whereas God has permitted trading and forbidden riba, compound interest on what? On debts. Compound interest on debts. Baha'u'llah talks about benevolent interest, which means no interest at all, and the person who's borrowed the money pays back whenever they want to, whenever they can, he or she can. So whoever receives an admonition from the Lord and stops eating riba shall not be punished for past actions. His case is for God to judge. But whoever returns to it, such are the dwellers of the fire, and they will abide therein forever. Now, remember what forever means. It doesn't mean for all time, because in the next world, there isn't any time. So we don't really know what forever means, or infinity, for that matter. We don't really have a conception of it. Thank you. So now, then he says in the next one, 278, "O you who believe, be afraid of God and give up what remains due to you from riba." In other words, if you loaned out money and you're charging compound interest, go back to the person and say he'll no longer owe it from now on. Just simple interest on the loan, that's all, or no interest. So then you have, let's see, we have here, go to 282. 282. This is the longest verse in the Quran, the longest verse in the Quran, in the longest surah in the Quran, longest chapter in the Quran, 282. It is discussed in Kitab Yagan, page 69 or paragraph 76, for those of you who have the new paragraph numbers. What does it have to do with? O you who believe, O you who believe, when you contract a debt or for a fixed period, write it down. Let a scribe write it down in justice between you. Let not the scribe refuse to write as God has taught him. So let him write. Let him, the debtor who incurs the liability, dictate, and he must fear God, his Lord, and diminish not anything of what he owes. If the debtor is poor of understanding or weak, and is unable to dictate for himself, then let his guardian dictate in justice. Dictate in justice, not dictate in justice. Dictate in justice, in all justice. You see, the longest thing in the longest verse in the Quran has to do with contract law. This is the time when it was through Islam, actually, that we have much of the modern contract law that we take for granted today. For instance, bankruptcy. Bankruptcy was not recognized outside of Islam. What happened to you if during the times of, of Dickens, you couldn't pay your debt? What happened to you? They throw you in prison until your loved ones could raise it or someone else could raise it. And what if they couldn't? Well, that's just too bad. You lived at the you lived on the state's tab after that, if that was the case, or worse. I'm not really sure. But in Islam, they allow you to declare bankruptcy. What does Islam suggest to you to do? When you're starting a business, which is a very risky thing, most businesses, maybe 90%, according to some persons, depending on the country, most businesses go out of business. So don't borrow money to start a business. What should you do instead? Look for investors. Well, investors, for one thing, they'll be pretty smart. Maybe you've seen Shark Tank on television or something. Some of them are pretty smart. The other thing investors will do is, what happens if they lose the money? They have to walk away. That's it. There's no further recourse to them. That means if this happens generally, in speaking to the, with regard to the whole economy, what if the economy goes into a depression? Then there's lots and lots of bankruptcies. Look what happened after 2008. So many houses were underwater. If it is an investment, no money is owed. This allows the entire economy to get back on its feet again, for people to come up with new ideas and to spin them to possible investors, those who are very wise with their money and always have money to invest, and the economy can get going again. On the other hand, if you use borrowed money to start your businesses and those businesses fail, nothing can continue. As we saw in 2008, I was asked in Abu Dhabi when that happened, how long do you think this will last? And I said, 10 years. That was just about right. But I'm sure others came up with exactly the same. Why? Because all those debts had to be washed out, either forgiven or paid off, or something had to happen to them. They had to be adjusted. Had persons not borrowed something like that, such a big ticket item, everything has changed since then. What I'm getting at is Islam, the Quran has a great deal about business, contract law, about the discharge of business and debts, etc., giving to the orphans, etc., that did not exist before. And so that's one of the things that I noticed as an economist, and that was one of the things that interested me in following the economics of the divine Quran. Maybe there's a middle way, I thought, some way between capitalism and socialism or communism that is revealed in the Quran that nobody has dug out yet because the book has been sealed up to now. So let's have a look, and I did. All right. Now we begin the family of Imran, Surah 3. The family of Imran, Surah 3. Alif Lam Mim, used how many times in this surah? 5,662 times, which is 298 times 298 times what? 19. Yes, I saw somebody say yes. Good answer. 19. Absolutely. In this surah. So then let's have a look at what we review here. Let me get this out of the way. I got to pull this back over here. And now we go to, I dump this and go to here. Reading 5, Surah 3, Al-Imran, the family of Imran. We begin here with Surah 3, the family of Imran. We read Alif Lam Mim, in the first verse. Now, can I share the screen? Is Neda back yet?
I've been back. What do you mean, share that you do have that capability, dear? Do you not
Yeah,
see
well,
that?
let me see. I go down to here. Let me get over here again.
Yeah.
I go down to here and it says, aha, now I can. Okay, I beg your pardon. My apologies. Let's go to Al Imran. Here it is. Because when I first tried to do it, Neda, it said that the host had not allowed you to do it.
Okay, sorry, and I must have missed it when I went to go check on the baby. Sorry about that, but I did
Okay.
do it. Yeah.
All right, can we see it now? Does
Yes.
everybody see it? Surah 3, you see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's move ahead. Alif Lam Mim in the first verse, 5,662 times in the surah, which is 19 times 298. God is 19, according to the summed values of the letters forming the Arabic word for one or wahid. So God is 19, God is one. You're actually saying the same thing. Then we see in 2 and 4 that this is the book of God, of which there is no doubt, confirming all God has sent down through his prophets aforetime. Yeah, this is another thing. Why would the persons of previous religions object to the Quran when the Quran was saying what Christ said and what Moses said were true? That was the truth from your Lord. And now we give you more, we build on it. Again, I like to think of the idea of a recalcitrant union being offered by the working boss, by their boss, a better contract, more pay and shorter hours, et cetera. And they're saying, no, we want low pay and longer hours, the way we used to have it before. Okay, so, all right. All right, then, as a guidance to mankind, this is verse 4, aforetime as a guidance to mankind, and he sent down the criterion. The criterion is the name of a surah, and that will be taken up later on. Let's move to 7. It is he who has sent down to you the book. In it are verses that are entirely clear. They are the foundations of the book. Go down here to where the words start again, and others not entirely clear. So as for those in whose hearts there is a deviation from the truth, filled with doubts and misgivings, let's say, or he believes in all sorts of weird schemes and all sorts of things that people move against one another, and superstitions and everything, schemes. They follow that which is not entirely clear thereof, seeking al-fitna and seeking for its hidden meanings, but none knows its hidden meanings except God. And those who are firmly grounded in knowledge. Which human beings that have ever walked on the face of the earth are the most firmly grounded in knowledge? The manifestations. Clearly, obviously, the manifestations of God. And so, I'd like to see all of this, I guess I can't. All right. And so it is they who will explain it. And in several parts, I have them here, but I haven't been able to open it yet. In several parts where it says, and it is for us to explain it. That is, for the manifestations of God, and they who are also who after them are well guided in knowledge. Well, the apostles of Christ, that was during the Christian dispensation. During the Muslim dispensation, who do we consider to be the most favored in God's knowledge after His Holiness Muhammad? It would be the descendants of the family of Muhammad, those that we call imams. And they talk things, they elucidated and elaborated and expounded on the Quran for 260 years, and then they were gone, and they disappeared. That's where we get 1,260 years. And so, and then in the time of the Bab, who expounded on the Bab's words? His Holiness Baha'u'llah. And who were the ones that were the most holy in the Baha'i dispensation? the letters of the living. And then, of course, after the letters of the living, who in this dispensation? The hands of the cause of God, yes? The hands of the cause of God. Remember where it says, and I think I've gone over this before, I stuck it up on my board somewhere. Oh, I can't find it. And that's as sharp as your sight today. Okay, never mind. This is this is who you're dealing with. And with hands did we create the heavens. And I think I'll get that for you because I wrote it down somewhere. I really did. No, I can't find it. All right. And with hands did we create the heavens. Here it is right here. All right. I have to keep going at this moment, however. Let's keep moving. 14. What does 14 remind us? Verse 14, what does that remind us? Now let's see, up here. That this life's pleasures are fleeting. Very quickly. Let's read what it says. Let me get this down here so where we can read it. Are we there yet? Oh, wow. How do you like that? Oh, there you go. Well, all right. Go back to here. Let me get both for you. There we go. 14. I have that as page 109 in the one on the screen, and 85. I'm sorry, 80. Yes, 85 on the old textbook. I use the old one. Can you see the Quran one, or do I have to punch on it? Do I do this? Can you now see the Quran page? No, okay. So I have to start that over. Well, let's stay with this because you have your Qurans in front of you in one form or another. Then let's move to 25, verse 25. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, 14. Beautified for men is the love of things they covet, women, children, much of gold and silver, branded beautiful horses. What do we have for horses today? We don't have branded beautiful horses. What do we have? Oh, come on. What does a horse do? Takes you around.
Cars.
Yes, cars, right, cars. Cars. We have beautiful cars and cattle and well-tilled land. This is the pleasure of the present world's life. But God has the excellent return with him. Think of the life to come. You know, one of the things I did, I don't wonder if I think I have time for this. One of the things I did is to try to figure out mathematically a mathematical formula. We were told to do this in the university for what it would mean if persons valued after death. And what you immediately see is if people valued after death and knew that what they did here created the kind of after death they would have, most of the problems in the world would be snuffed out, absolutely snuffed out. Let me come back over to here a minute. Okay, we have a few more minutes left. Let's keep moving. 25. How be it, when we gather them together on the day about which there is no doubt, and each person will be paid in full what he has earned, and they will not be dealt with unjustly. That's the day of God, friends. That's the day of God, the day of judgment. The day of judgment is in one way whenever a manifestation of God is revealed, because human beings are judged as to whether they accept him or not after they've seen fair evidence of whether or not he or she speaks the truth. And that is, they're being judged. And again, it's the same way as if I give an exam to my class. I'll change the answers. I'll change the questions a little bit. The principle will be the same. but it won't be exactly the same thing I gave them on quiz 3 or quiz 4. So again, the manifestations of God come, they speak a different language, they come from a different region, they come from a different tribe, and we are asked if we recognize the face of God himself or not. And that's how we are judged. And no one is wrong, because if he truly believes, then he accepts. And if he doesn't, if he's been a hypocrite and just worship names like I worship Christ or I worship Moses or Muhammad, etc., and nothing appears outside of that, then of course they can't accept it. It's not possible for them to accept it. Okay. All right, 28 and 30, and I think we'll quit with this, which includes the verse, and Allah warns you against himself. If you go to 28, let not the believers take disbelievers as their helpers. Okay, you're having a really bad night. It's an awful night. Your heart is broken. Do you call up your old friend who's not a believer after you've been a Baha'i for many years and you have a Baha'i understanding? Or do you wait and call up another Baha'i, or just submerge yourself in prayer and writings? According to this, it's better if you don't tell all your problems to a non-Baha'i, or a non-believer. Never mind Baha'i, Christian, Jew, or something like that. Depends upon when you've lived. If you're living in this dispensation, then the manifestation of God for the dispensation in which you live, because that person knows the structure of life, whereas the others may not get it all, and they may lead you down a wrong path, inadvertently, of course, because they still love you, but it's going to be different for them. They'll give you a different answer instead of the believers. Now, again, in the 4 Gospels, well, after in the New Testament, John warns the people. Well, I think it's, yes, John, or no, I think it's Peter. Which one was the one who gathered the taxes? Was it Peter or Paul? Peter, right? Was it Peter? Yeah, I believe so.
Matthew.
Matthew. All right. And what did Matthew warn the people against? Going into court, taking each other into court to solve their problems. Why was that? And why is that? Because the court judges they're not going to rule by the word of God. They're going to rule by the word of Rome, the law of Rome. And it's the same for us today. We are extolled by the guardian not to stay out of the courts if you can. Nasty business. Probably for the same reason, although I'm not going to speculate as to why that is. Continuing here, he says, and whoever does that will never be helped by God in any way, except if you indeed fear a danger from them. That is, you're a little bit in warning of them. You don't trust everything they tell you. You hold yourself back from completely falling into what advice they give you. And Allah warns you against himself. And Allah warns you against himself. And Allah is the final return. And to Allah is the final return. Let's stop with that. What does it mean God warns you against himself? It seems as if we've jumped onto another subject, and perhaps we have, because does the sun warn us against itself in a physical way? It does. What happens if we try to go too close to the sun? Yeah, we burn up. What is the only thing that can go to the sun and not be burned up? Nothing. Nothing can go to the sun. Nothingness, or a nothing thing. A nothing thing, okay, never mind, can go to the sun and not be burned up. It is the same when we approach God. The more we have of ourselves in us, that is the more we are declaring ourselves to have an independent existence, which of course is utter blasphemy, sheer blasphemy when it comes to understanding God. Those of us who have detached ourselves and renounced ourselves and have given up all the things that he has told us to give up, then we can approach God and we become blessed with him and his light. His light is not fire, but it's light. That's all I have time for. That's all we have time for today. It's 5:36. We have about 10 minutes or so for questions. If anyone has a question, let me see if I can stop sharing the screen and get stop share. Okay, there. That goes here. Here everybody comes. Now, if you will raise your hands as you will. Let me look at the chats first.
Derek, yeah, let's go to Derek first. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question about the no compulsion in religion, and that my understanding is that as the Islamic Empire expanded, when they conquered a land, what they did was they said that Jews and Christians, because they were people of the book, could keep their religion, but everybody else had to either convert to Islam or they were executed. Is that actually correct in how that went down, or am I
Yeah, that's,
misunderstanding?
I think in some times and in some ways that was when the Sunnis took over Asia and they moved out. They were the ones who made all the wars they wanted to be over everybody. When they did that, they said, these are your two choices. Yes, if the Christians and Jews did what? Paid a certain amount every month. Let's call it protection money, but paid a certain amount every month. They'd be left alone and be allowed to build their churches and synagogues, etc. Later on, this was made a little more harsh, and in other places, it was forgotten entirely. Remember that even though Christ said, "Thou shalt not kill," and even if you take that to mean only individuals, that didn't stop, and not nations or groups of persons, that didn't stop Christians from killing, nor from making war on one another. And they all called themselves Christian nations, killed a lot of people, 2 world wars, all Christians. So that's true. That was part of the law in some times in some places, but not everywhere and at all times. No. Next. Okay, we're going to go to here. Yes, Matthew 17, 24, 27. Thank you very much, Neda. Thank you very, very much.
No, you're welcome. Anybody else with questions? Okay, if not, I guess we will see you all next week.